Hello, so this is the next video, and from here we're going to cover a series, and I will call this the hobbies that invigorate and motivate you in retirement. In retirement, as I've been talking about all along, you want to keep yourself busy, and it's very important that you have hobbies that will invigorate and motivate you. And so I have a few ideas for you. This will be the first in the series, and this one itself will have a series itself because I'm going to talk about diving and how you can contribute to. You've heard me say many times before that it's always good for us in our retirement to give back to society. And what better to do that? What better way to do that than to help our youth grow and thrive? And one way we could do that is by help dive judging. So there are a few ways you can do that. You can see here you can get paid for it as well to supplement your retirement income by joining associations like the Eastern Officials Association, which I can show you in a minute right here. This organization does have swimming and diving as a sport that you can be an official in. The certification process is not that rigorous, but once you do that, you are able to get paid through the system called arbiter pay, which is pretty good as well. So it can do that, but more importantly, there are various summer dive leagues throughout the country. One good example is the one in Northern Virginia called my NVSL, Northern Virginia Swim League, which has a dive league as well, which has produced a number of Olympians as well. So it's a very good avenue for you to give back to society by helping the young kids, because without a judge, you cannot have the dive meets. And while the summer dive leagues do require the parents to participate, usually it's very hard for them to do that. So they are always looking for volunteers. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that, but today I just wanted to go over the 1 meter diving because this will be the first of many in a series. And then specifically today we'll talk about the forward dive group because there are basically several groups. There's the forward dive group, there's the backward dive group, the reverse dive group, the inward dive group, and then the twister dive group. So there are 5 groups that we can go over. This first one we'll talk about only the forward dive group. And so in a nutshell, there are 4 elements of a dive. So as you probably have seen in the Olympics, dive occurs within a split second, and you are supposed to throw a score on that basis. But I'll break it down for you in very, very slow and motivating ways. So you're looking for 4 things in a dive. You want basically the approach, the takeoff, the flight, and then the entry. For the approach, you want to have the diver do at least 3 steps before they do the takeoff. You want them to have a bold, confident approach. And remember, in summer dive and even in high school, which will be the vast majority of the diving judging you'll be doing in the paid aspect of this, but the summer dive will have anywhere from 6-year-olds all the way up to 17-year-old boys and girls. So there will be varying levels of skills, varying levels of confidence, but you want to reward the bold, confident approaches with 3 steps. You want to reward the takeoff that has a 1-leg hurdle, which I will show you in a couple of seconds as well, a 2-foot takeoff, and then you want to see them go high as opposed to outward. You want them to go height in terms of distance from the board. You want them to do the flight. You want them to complete that dive. You'll see some somersaults. You'll see some twisters along the way. You want them to complete the dive, and then you want to enter. You want to see them enter the water with the legs together, and then the toes pointed out as stated here. And then you want them to be no more than 3 feet away from the board when they enter the water. So that's what you're looking for. And then the scores, as you see here, are going to be basically 0 to 10. You'll be throwing a score from 0 to 10. And for high school and summer dive, predominantly you'll be in this range, 5 to 6.5 to 0. You'll be in this range. You'll rarely see these ranges, but obviously you can throw that as well. But you will be predominantly in these ranges, which I'll go over a little bit more detail as well. There are 4 possible positions in the dive world. There's a straight, there's a pike, there's a tuck, and a free. And then I'll show you basically what that means. A pike is, well, let's go over the straight dive first. This is what's called a straight dive. It's a video from the diver guy.
Subscribe, and with that, we'll get right into the video. Starting right here with
Like that. So you see that there was no bending of any body part. That would be a straight dive. And then a pike dive is this one right here. This is another video from a guy named Scott Donnie.
He's right on the end of the board, reaching up, nice position.
You see that his body was bent in the middle at the waist. That's called a pike dive. And then the third one is called a tuck dive, which I will show you right in a second, which is this one right here. This is another video from the diver guy.
And chat about what makes.
You see that she did what's called a complete tuck, which is bending her knees and grabbing them. That's called a tuck dive. And then the free is basically where they combine elements of different aspects of the straight, pike, and or tuck, and that you'll usually see that in the twister categories. So those are the basics of it, but I'm sure it's easy for you to be intimidated, but let me simplify it for basically the purpose of summer dive and high school dive. Mostly you'll see, again, as I was indicating before, 6 and below, and then you want to throw the dive that you saw with all of the elements. So again, you want to consider the approach, the takeoff, the flight, and then the entry. And you want to you want to see if they were in the satisfactory range, which is 5 to 6.5. So if you see a bold, confident approach with a one-legged hurdle with 2 feet takeoff, a height that is at least where the navel, the midsection of their body should reach at least the apex of their height when they are in midair. So you want to see that height. That would be what's called a satisfactory dive. And then so bold, confident approach, good takeoff, flight where at least the navel or the midsection is the height of where they would normally stand, and then the legs are together, toes pointing out. That, my friends, is where you will be in the 5 to 6.5 range, which is called satisfactory. If it's less than that, you will be in the deficient range in general. So to simplify it for our summer dive and high school dive novices and somewhat intermediates, usually if it's everything I described, it'll be in the satisfactory range. If it's less than that, it'll be in the deficient range. Unsatisfactory is what I call barely legal. So let's say that they performed the dive, but it was barely legal. It barely met all the elements that were here. So they weren't able to finish the dive. They basically landed on their feet, not being vertical whatsoever. And by the way, that's a key aspect of the entry as well. You want it to be nearly or perfectly vertical when they enter the water. So if they do that, but that will be in the satisfactory range. But if they are anything less than that, deficient, if it's barely legal, if they barely touch the feet first when they were doing a twister or a rotation or a somersault, then you'll put them in unsatisfactory range. And then the referee can call what's called a failed dive if they do the dive completely incorrectly, if they do a different dive. So let's say that they were supposed to land feet first and they landed head first, or vice versa. That would be called what's called a failed dive. So in a nutshell, that's what you're looking for. And don't fret, please. I know that it can be very intimidating watching the Olympic dives and how the scores the judges score the dives. But please keep in mind that you are never the only judge. You are generally going to be one of rarely 3. You're usually going to see you're going to be one of 5 or one of 7. But in dive, the way that the scoring works is that they throw out the highest and lowest if you are one of 5, and then they just throw those out. They add the remaining 3, and then they multiply that by the dive difficulty. So usually you'll hear something called either 2.2, 2.4, which is the dive difficulty. So they add up the remaining 3 scores and then multiply that by what's called the dive difficulty. If you're one of 7, they will throw out the highest 2 and the lowest 2, and then they'll again combine the remaining 3, multiply it by the diving difficulty. And my friends, please keep in mind that the more you do that, the better you will become, really. And what I call dive is a perfect sport for as a hobby, because again, you'll be helping the young kids out, and it really is a self-adjusting mechanism, because if somebody messes up, guess what? It doesn't matter, because your scores will likely be thrown out anyway. So with that, why don't we go ahead and go over one particular dive that I just wanted to score over with you and see what you think. So this is, again, a front dive tuck. It may be the early example that we saw. But in that one, I see a bold, confident approach. I saw perfect height, and we'll see that one more time. Bold, confident approach. You see him doing a one-legged hurdle with 2-foot takeoff, complete height. He did a complete dive that finished. You see his entry right here, which was completely vertical, and it was also about 3 feet away from the water, at least the way it looked to me. Right there to there, right there to there was about 3 feet or less. So therefore, that is definitely satisfactory. And he had height that was more than the apex point that I talked about, that you want his midsection, his navel to be where his height would be, which would be about here. He was way above that. So this would definitely be in the 7 to 8 category, as I was talking about earlier. So that is it in a nutshell. And I will see you in the next one.